Have you ever felt that phantom vibration in your pocket?
Oh, all the time.
Right. You know the exact sensation I'm talking about. You're just standing in line somewhere, you feel this distinct buzz against your leg, and you reach down.
Fully convinced you just got a text.
Exactly. But your phone isn't even in that pocket.
Yeah.
Or perhaps you've been carrying around this strange low-grade exhaustion, just a sort of ambient fatigue that seems to come entirely from being constantly tethered to the grid.
Yeah, that ambient fatigue is incredibly common.
It really is. And if you've experienced either of those things, you are going to find today's deep dive particularly relevant. We're digging into a really remarkable novel. It's called The Lag, a novel in distributed parts by Marshall Haleskull.
It's a fantastic piece of work.
And our mission today is to explore the profound psychological and physical boundaries between our biological selves and our digital devices. And we're going to use this text as our guide.
Which is the perfect guide for this.
Yeah.
It is a meticulously constructed book. And it approaches this whole topic not through, a dry technical manual, but through a very focused narrative lens.
Right.
The entire premise centers around a DARPA-funded research group. They're known as the Lund cohort. And they have been sequestered at this isolated facility called the Nearfield Institute to study a phenomenon they call cognitive extension.
Cognitive extension. It sounds so clinical, but the implications are
Massive, yeah. What makes their research so compelling is that they aren't looking at rudimentary metrics. They don't care about how many hours a day people look at their phones.
That's too simple for them.
Way too simple. They are investigating how human consciousness is literally, structurally distributing itself across networks, and how that distribution is fundamentally altering what it means for any of us to simply be here.
Right. They're looking at the actual architecture of our attention. And the lead researcher of this cohort, Dr. Sable Koss, she perfectly embodies this inquiry. Early in the text, we get this highly specific detail about her daily life. It's a great detail. She calculates that she spends exactly 11 hours and 14 minutes a day in what she terms screen-mediated cognition.
And the phrasing there is deeply intentional. I mean, Sable entirely rejects the phrase screen time.
Okay, let's unpack this because the distinction she makes is really crucial.
It is. Because if you think about it, screen time implies a discrete activity governed by a clock. It's something you can easily separate from the rest of your existence.
Like going to the gym or cooking dinner.
Exactly. It frames the screen as an object you interact with and then just walk away from.
But Sable uses the phrase screen-mediated cognition because she's trying to describe a state where her actual neurological processes, like her thinking, her problem-solving, her memory retrieval, are actively being shaped and routed through a digital interface.
Yeah.
It's not just a block of time, it is a completely altered state of mind.
Precisely. And that realization forms the basis of Sable's initial hypothesis,
Yeah.
which, by the way, also provides the title for the book. Right. We spend a lot of time in our culture worrying that the boundary between human cognition and technology is dissolving, like it's some future threat.
Right, like the robots are coming.
Exactly. But Sable's argument is that we're essentially worrying about a dam that broke years ago. The boundary is already dissolved. The lag is the term she uses to describe a phenomenological delay.
Meaning a delay in our own sensory self-awareness.
Yes, our consciousness still foolishly experiences itself as bounded. We feel local. We feel like we are sitting right here in this room inside our own skulls. But in reality, our cognitive processes are already distributed across global platforms, algorithms, and data architectures.
We are just waiting for our perception to catch up to our reality. I mean, think about your own lag for a moment. Have you ever had a fleeting thought, maybe a task you need to do or a question you just want to look up, and before you've even consciously formed the intention to write it down, your brain has automatically routed that impulse to a specific app?
Oh, all the time.
Your thumb is already reaching for the glass, unlocking the screen, opening the Notes app, before your conscious mind has even articulated the choice. That split-second delay where your body acts on its network extension before your localized mind registers it, that is the lag.
It's the moment you realize your nervous system doesn't end at your fingertips anymore.
Yeah.
Now, if Sable is focused on the internal psychological reality of this distribution, there's another member of the cohort, Dishi, who focuses on the physical geography of it.
Dishi's fascinating. He's a media archaeologist from Lagos.
Right. But rather than digging up physical artifacts like pottery or coins, he charts the material history of the invisible. He tracks cellular coverage across West Africa, and he brings to the cohort these massive physical paper maps that chart the network from 2009 to 2019.
The visual progression of these maps is incredibly striking in the book. The areas with a cellular signal are shaded blue, and the unconnected areas remain white. As you move through the decade of maps, you see this blue wash just spreading across the continent.
While the white spaces shrink into these tiny, isolated pockets.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the terminology Deshi uses to describe those remaining white spaces. In typical telecom parlance, we just call them dead zones.
Right.
But dead zone implies a failure. It implies a space that is supposed to be alive with signal, but has somehow died. Deshi rejects this completely. He insists they are structural gaps.
Structural gaps.
Yeah, his point is that a network isn't just a blanket thrown over the world. It's a structure built by capital and infrastructure, and it's actively shaped by where it doesn't go. Just as walls define a room by blocking movement, these structural gaps define the network by their absence.
And to bring this abstract mapping down to a human scale, Deshi shares the documented experience of a woman he interviewed named Amara. She is a fish seller living in southeastern Nigeria.
Her story is incredible.
It really is. Her daily life forces her to traverse this exact boundary we're talking about. Every day, she walks 12 kilometers from the highly connected, bustling market where she works, back to her unconnected village, which sits squarely inside one of these structural gaps.
And Deshi asks her to articulate what that daily transition actually feels like.
Yeah.
She offers this incredibly visceral analogy. She explains that losing the signal is not like flipping a switch.
It's a gradient.
A gradient, yes. She compares it to walking into the sea. You don't instantly transition from dry land to floating in the deep water. You wade into it.
As she walks the 12 kilometers home, the background buffering stops. The pinging notifications fall away, and that invisible tether of the network just loosens.
She describes the sensation as becoming more dense. She says it is like water boiling in reverse.
I love that line.
It's brilliant. She shifts from the expansive distributed vapor of the connected market back into the local heavy ice of her physical body in the village.
And the way she conceptualizes the weight of that transition is something that really sits with you. Amara says that walking out of the signal feels like putting down a very heavy bag that she didn't even know she had been carrying all day.
There's a real relief in it.
But the haunting part is what happens the next morning. She says picking the phone back up and walking back into the signal feels like remembering that the bag is yours.
Wow.
I want you to really consider the invisible weight of your own connectivity. It's a cognitive load that is so constant, you likely don't even perceive it until you're completely severed from the grid.
That concept, the body bearing an invisible continuous load, connects seamlessly to the research of Marin. She's the cognitive scientist in the cohort. Marin's laboratory focuses entirely on proprioception.
For those unfamiliar, proprioception is your body's internal sense of its own position in space.
Right. It's the reason you can close your eyes and still touch your nose without looking. Marin studies this mechanism using virtual reality.
And the foundational concept of her research is deeply counterintuitive. She argues that we do not actually inhabit our physical bodies directly.
Instead, we inhabit a biological model of our bodies that our nervous system is constantly rendering in real time.
Virtual reality, she argues, doesn't create an illusion. It actually exposes the truth of our biology by decoupling the visual input from the physical sensation.
She's demonstrating that our sense of embodiment is essentially an ongoing internal performance. It's a rendering. And she proves the fragility of this rendering through a deeply personal complication in her own research.
This part was wild.
Yeah. Due to her prolonged daily exposure to these VR environments, Marin's biological rendering starts to glitch. She actually develops a physical tremor in her left hand in the real world.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the tremor is only half the story.
Right?
When Marin puts the VR headset back on and looks at her simulated, rendered hand in the digital environment, it is perfectly steady. There is no tremor.
Her brain is able to stabilize the digital interface, but it can no longer stabilize her biological hand.
The virtual body literally becomes a more trustworthy, more functional vessel than her flesh and blood body.
And the conclusion Marin draws from this is profound. She suggests that we have fundamentally misunderstood the timeline of human evolution. We tend to think the post-human era will arrive in some distant future when we figure out how to upload our consciousness into server farms.
Like science fiction.
Exactly. But Marin realizes the post-human era actually arrives the moment we stop trusting our biological rendering. It begins the second we start treating our own physical bodies as just one interface among many, and in her case, an interface that is proving to be less reliable than the digital alternative.
That reframing of the human body as just a faulty piece of hardware is a deeply unsettling realization, and perhaps no one in the cohort is more destabilized by these findings than young Su.
Oh, Young Soo, the resident AI ethicist.
Yeah, he is a prominent scholar, someone who has literally testified before the EU Parliament regarding the cognitive impacts of large language models. But during his time with the cohort, he recounts an interaction with a Dutch member of parliament that completely dismantled his professional worldview.
The politician asked him a very simple, cutting question. He asked, how do you know that your concern about AI isn't itself a product of AI-shaped thinking?
It is the ultimate trap for an ethicist.
It really is.
Yeah.
Young Soo is thrown into a complete epistemological crisis, meaning the very tools he relies on to evaluate truth and morality have been compromised by the environment he's trying to critique.
He realizes that we are essentially fish trying to study water, using scientific instruments that are themselves made of water.
Exactly. His entire ethical framework relies on the assumption that there is a bounded human subject, an autonomous local self that needs to be protected from the machine.
But everything the cohort is discovering proves that this bounded subject is a myth. We are already extended.
And the realization doesn't just stay academic for him, it manifests physically.
At one point, Young-soo has a severe panic attack simply from holding his laptop. If you or I were to hold it, it's just a 1.4 kilogram piece of aluminum and glass. It's light.
But Young Soo is standing there holding this object, paralyzed by the realization that it contains his entire intellectual life, his research, his communications.
It is fully distributed identity.
The laptop possesses this crushing ontological weight. It feels heavier than he is.
This raises an important question. What does it actually feel like to exist in this state of total, inescapable distribution?
When Young Soo tries to articulate the sensation to the cohort, he uses a phrase that is incredibly evocative. He says it feels like the ground is a metaphor.
Like the ground is a metaphor.
Yeah, you are standing on a solid floor, but your extended mind knows that the floor is just a high-resolution display of a floor. There's a profound vertigo that comes with realizing your roots aren't in the soil. They're in the cloud.
With the entire cohort spinning out into this sense of groundlessness, the presence of their sixth member becomes absolutely vital.
Why?
Yes, Lida. She is a 59-year-old former systems architect, and her role in the project is to serve as the cohort's control.
Lida is the baseline of the unextended subject. She deliberately carries no devices, she doesn't take digital notes, and when she participates in their discussions, she doesn't rush to fill the silence with data.
The text describes her pauses in conversation as load-bearing. I just love that phrase.
Load-bearing pauses.
She anchors the room just by sitting and listening with this intense architectural attention.
And her ability to hold that attention isn't just a personality trait. It's tied to the great secret of the Nearfield Institute itself.
This was my favorite part of the book.
Decades prior, Lida used her considerable wealth from the telecom industry to construct this facility. And hidden at the end of a narrow, unremarkable hallway, she built a military-grade Faraday cage.
It is a room meticulously shielded from all electromagnetic radiation. No Wi-Fi, no cellular signals, no radio waves, no Bluetooth.
It represents a state of original darkness. It is an electromagnetically dead space, simulating the atmospheric conditions of the world before the 1890s.
Knowing this room exists, Sable naturally wants to run her final experiment on Lida, the unextended control. She sets up an EEG and heart monitors on Lida, but she does this in a regular, unshielded room without taking a phone away, simply to get a baseline reading of her natural state.
And the data they get back is completely startling. Sitting in a room vibrating with unseen signals, Lida's heart rate rests at a perfectly flat, even 62 beats per minute.
Her EEG doesn't show a brain frantically reaching out, trying to buffer or connect to the unseen network. It shows a brain settling into a deep, interlocking harmony.
The results completely upend Sable's entire operating paradigm. She looks at Lida's biometric data and realizes her theory of the lag was fundamentally incomplete.
The lag isn't just our consciousness failing to catch up to its digital extension.
No, the true lag is consciousness forgetting how to come home. Sable theorizes that the self naturally wants to change phases, much like Amara's metaphor of the water. We're supposed to extend out into the network, become vapor, gather information, and then contract back into the local body, becoming ice.
It is meant to be a breathing rhythm.
An inhalation and an exhalation.
Exactly. And the crisis of the modern connected world is not the fact that we extend ourselves. The crisis is that the constant ambient electromagnetic pressure of the network never allows us the space to contract.
We are collectively trapped in a perpetual exhale, unable to draw breath back into our local bodies.
Which highlights the immense power of our physical environment. This brings us to a minor but crucial character in the book. Pell, the building facilitator at Nearfield.
He's the person responsible for the actual infrastructure of the building.
Right. And in one scene, Pell changes a buzzing fluorescent light bulb in the hallway. When the buzzing finally stops, the sudden silence it leaves behind is deafening.
It's a small moment, but it drives home the point that the invisible infrastructure of the spaces we inhabit shapes our consciousness just as much, if not more, than the actual data flowing through our screens.
The environment isn't just a container for the medium.
The environment is the medium. And this realization profoundly alters the trajectory of Asha, the novelist who was originally commissioned to write a standard narrative account of the cohort's research.
Immersed in this environment and these findings, Asha realizes that imposing a linear narrative, a story with a neat beginning, middle, and end, would completely falsify the truth of what the cohort has uncovered.
The network isn't linear, so the documentation of it cannot be linear.
So she abandons the book she was contracted to write. Instead, she structures her manuscript as a courtyard.
Rather than a story pulling you forward, it is a space designed for pure presence.
She focuses her writing on the hyper-specific local realities of the Nearfield Institute. The arrangement of 7 stones, the exact paths of ant colonies, the way pools of rainwater reflect the architecture of the building.
This pivot toward pure, unmediated presence is echoed by the meta-narrator running throughout the source text, a voice known as Orga unextended.
Orga serves as the voice of the residue,
representing the fragment of the human experience that stubbornly resists being captured, transmitted, or translated into a data point.
To illustrate this, Orga writes repeatedly about a fictional woman in a quiet house simply making a cup of chamomile tea.
She fills a kettle with water, strikes a physical match, and watches the glow of the flame illuminate her hands. There is no optimization in the act.
It is the impossible quiet dream of a purely unextended life. It's an act that has no network value whatsoever.
And this perspective from Orga ultimately guides the cohort to their final true finding. Sable realizes that the ultimate goal of their research cannot be to simply measure, quantify, or even understand the phenomenon of cognitive extension.
Because the act of trying to comprehensively understand it is just another form of consumption. It is just the mind reaching out to grab a concept and turn it into actionable content.
Which is the exact mechanism of the network. Instead, Sable concludes that the real goal, the only valid response to their findings, is the ancient practice of attending.
Attending is simply being fully present to a thing, whether that is a cup of tea, the bark of a tree, or even a tremoring left hand.
Without any desire to parse it, optimize it, or turn it into data. It is observation without consumption.
So what does this all mean for us sitting here with our devices within arm's reach? Amara, the fish seller, was entirely right. The bag of connectivity absolutely gets heavier once you realize you're carrying it.
Once you understand that your cognition is extended, you lose a certain kind of innocence.
You can never unknow the weight of the network pressing against you, but armed with the knowledge of how that mechanism works, you do have the conscious choice to temporarily put the bag down, to choose to contract.
And the most empowering takeaway from Lida's example is that you don't need to build a copper-shielded Faraday cage at the end of a buzzing hallway to find that original silence.
Lida's great revelation, proven by her resting heart rate in an unshielded room, is that the silence is already inside us.
It exists in the physiological pause between our breaths. The room of original darkness isn't a physical architectural space that you have to unlock with a brass key.
The room is simply wherever you make the conscious decision to stop reaching out.
Exactly.
I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought straight from the closing pages of the novel. After all her research, Sable finally allows herself to spend time inside the Faraday cage. She unplugs entirely. Afterwards, she goes to her own bedroom and falls into a deep sleep.
The next morning, she looks at her smartwatch, and the device tells her she achieved a mathematically perfect sleep score. It tracked her heart rate, her respiration, her REM cycles.
But the text makes a vital observation. The watch cannot record her dreams because, as the book points out, dreams are the last province of the unextended.
It's a beautiful thought.
It leaves you to ponder a rather profound question. In a world where virtually every waking thought, impulse, and action is mediated, tracked, and extended into the cloud, are our dreams the only truly disconnected wilderness we have left?
And if they are, what happens to that wilderness as the signal of our waking world just keeps getting stronger?
Take a moment today. Notice the weight of the bag, put it down, and just attend to the quiet.